Screw YouTube, you can sit on my Facebook, linked innocence lost, all Twitter underground, TikTok the boxes, Instagram PT, we chat like our friends with what's apprehension. Facebook has no faith, YouTube is not you. TikTok kills your time, we chat but don't talk. You said you read it but the Facebook is closed. Telegram, parents, Snapchat, attitude rules. Pinterest, TD, Reddit you can't scratch. Twitter can't be polished. LinkedIn sanity. Now we sink into the world of the Black Mirror. We don't really know where it ends. We give our time and attention to pixels instead of our family and friends. And I'm as guilty as the next. When I do this, it's hard to break out of the cell. But if we don't, we'll be in hell. Googleable, Wikipedia files ruling, Amazon your knees, it's your destiny, babe. Facebook has no face. YouTube is not you.
Hello, welcome to a mini HEYS reviews. I wanted to hit record and do a quick video reading some choice quotes from a book that I read recently, which is Musical Truth Volume 2 by Mark Devlin, DJ Mark Devlin. He's a DJ in the UK, DJ turned researcher and author. He's written 4 books, a trilogy of books about exposing the entertainment and musical industry, or I should say the musical arm of the entertainment industry. And just as a side note, the word entertainment, enter, to go in, tain, to hold, meant the mind. Entertainment, to enter and hold the mind. That's what the word means. And Mark Devlin researches, writes books telling you about how they do this through the medium of music. So a lot of our most beloved and memorable songs and acts, from rock music to hip hop to DJs to country music to pop music, it's astonishing how closely tied and linked many of these acts are to, drumroll please, the military industry. Yes, so many of these acts, singers, bands seem to come from highly connected families who are very often in the upper middle class and have a lot of ties with the military, both here in the UK and in the USA. So I thoroughly enjoyed Musical Truth 2. I learned a hell of a lot, and I thought that now I would just give you a few quotes. I'm not going to give you much commentary, but there are a few paragraphs which speak for themselves. I'll rather let you make your own mind up based on the author's words rather than hear me ramble incoherently. So this is from page 87, and it's a section about lifetime actors. Quote, "This is the realm of the lifetime actor. It's a term coined by author, researcher, and scholar Joe Atwill to address individuals who have become household names through their public personas. Bill Gates is the founder of Microsoft, for example. Their backgrounds tell a different story, however, usually revealing family links to military intelligence or other aspects of social control. In Gates's case, his father, William H. Gates Sr., had been head of the Planned Parenthood organization, which had evolved out of the American Eugenics Society. An insight into the mindset of these people comes from comments made by Margaret Sanger which is Planned Parenthood's founder. She says, quote, "The most merciful thing that a large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it." And, quote, "Human weeds, reckless breeders, spawning human beings who never should have been born." End quote. Margaret Sanger used these words in describing immigrants and the working class. Now, it becomes far more likely that Gates Jr.'s real role in society is to covertly push eugenics and population control, something borne out by his close association with the United Nations and its mass injection programs in Africa and his ties to genetically modified food monolith Monsanto. End quote. The Lifetime actor. Yeah, it does make you wonder. Some of these people, they are constantly rolled out and they are given mainstream platforms to speak and give their thoughts. And in Bill Gates' case, he funds many of the mainstream platforms through his foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They send money to The Guardian, for example, and they send money to, I think they fund the BBC in part as well. I'm not entirely sure about that, but it's certainly a key aspect of what they do and why he gets rolled out in his pastel sweatshirts and his man boobs, telling you what to do with your body, even though he has zero medical training and went to the same medical training establishment as I did, which is none. So a couple of pages here about the bloodlines. It's no secret that there are some people in this place with us who consider their blood to be extremely important, and they preserve it by either marrying within the family or only marrying into other highly prestigious families. And through this mechanism, and you don't need to look back too far in history, you just look at the royal families of Europe, and they would often marry a prince into this family over here to strengthen the diplomatic ties between countries, and this kind of thing went on. And I suppose many of us are under the impression that since kings and queens no longer run the show here, that this doesn't happen anymore. But no, that's not true. There are still families and bloodlines out there, and although we don't know or think of them as royalty in many cases now, because there are not many royal families left, they're still operating and they're still protecting their own personal fortunes and the wealth that's been amassed in their family that's generational, and they've built it up over many centuries, and they want to protect it and preserve it and grow it even further and use it to secure more power and more influence and more wealth for themselves. But what Mark Devlin tells us in his books is that many of our household names in the world of music and entertainment, particularly Hollywood actors and celebrities, all come from many of these families. As I mentioned, the military families earlier. So there's a section here. This is page 91 about bloodlines. Quote, "It's now well known that all US presidents to date have been genetic descendants of European nobility through just one character, the Emperor Charlemagne, 8th century king of the Franks. And it's been said that the candidate with the most European genes is the one that ends up winning each election." Pretty interesting. For example, George W. Bush and Barack Obama are related. On the surface, it appears as if you couldn't find two more diametrically opposed individuals, but the extended family trees tell a different story. The rest of Bush's family tree, as revealed in an article by CBS News and based on research by www.ancestry.com, similarly boggles the mind. It shows him to be related by blood, one way or another, to his opponent, John Kerry, his vice president, Dick Cheney, former President Abraham Lincoln, Princess Diana, Playboy founder Hugh Hefner, the aforementioned Vlad the Impaler, who King Chucky III has also stated publicly in an interview that he's related and descended from, and celebrities Marilyn Monroe, also a US intelligence asset and probable mind control subject, Madonna, Celine Dion, and Tom Cruise. Wikipedia additionally reports that Pocahontas is an ancestor of 2 presidential first ladies, the wives of Ronald Reagan and Woodrow Wilson. And to top it all off, the electronic dance music producer Moby, born Richard Melville Hall on the 11th of September 1965, turns out to be a descendant of Herman Melville, the writer of the Moby Dick novel, who hailed from a Freemasonic family. Incredible if true. I can't tell you that I have backed up and explored and verified every claim that we just read, but that would be a fun investigation for somebody to go out and do. Although I do remember clearly that Charles the King, who is the third one of his name here in England, stated that he's descended from Vlad the Impaler. I remember watching that with my own eyeballs. Okay, this section I got to get on the record. It is called The Manufacturing of Cool. Quote, a textbook example of culture creation came from the movement dubbed Cool Britannia in the mid-1990s, closely tied to the music genre that the mainstream media had dubbed Britpop. The idea was that after years of stagnation, the British music industry was undergoing a creative resurgence led by the 2 dynamic bands of the time, Blur from the south in London and Oasis from the north, Manchester. The bands were pitted as rivals in much the same way that the Rolling Stones from the south, London, and the Beatles from the north, Liverpool, had been in the 1960s. Given the evidence to show that all 4 bands were highly cherished assets with ties to the establishment and the world of the occult, it becomes easy to see why they were chosen to herald in the respective societal changes they helped foment. The campaign that led to Tony Blair's election victory for his new Labour Party in May 1997 had much invested in the Cool Britannia concept that Blur and Oasis symbolised. Blair's spin doctors had cultivated an image of him as a dynamic, visionary leader, very much in touch with the youth culture of his land. He took care to be seen playing guitar in TV appearances and talked of having been in bands himself, a far cry from the grey, austere image of his opponent, John Major. There were even reports of Blair having smoked cannabis in his younger years. Right on, dude! I don't think that is working. Does that mean we are recording right now? Blair threw a reception party at 10 Downing Street in July of 1997, to which a number of cool cultural icons were invited. The most famous image from this event is of Oasis frontman Noel Gallagher sipping champagne and chatting good-naturedly with Blair, a far cry from his own rebellious rock and roll image. By 2003, when Blair had co-launched the post-9/11 military incursions into Iraq and Afghanistan, the British public's opinion of him had switched dramatically. The tag of war criminal was frequently applied. In 2011, the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Commission in Malaysia found Blair and George W. Bush guilty of crimes against humanity. Despite this, in 2013, Noel Gallagher was still voicing his admiration for Blair in an interview for The New Statesman, which was being edited at the time by his friend Russell Brand, and in a 2016 Daily Mail interview recalled Blair's years in office as amazing. By way of some brief background, Blair took leadership of the Labour Party in 1994 following the very sudden and unexpected death of its previous leader, John Smith, of reported heart failure. In each of the years he was elected or re-elected, Blair presided over a major public event. In 1997, it was the sudden and unexpected death of Princess Diana. In 2001, it was the events and aftermath of 9/11. In 2005, it was the events and aftermath of the 7/7 attacks in London. when Labour Minister and leader of the House of Commons Robin Cook resigned in protest at the Blair government's launching of the Iraq War, he died suddenly and unexpectedly of reported heart failure while on a walking holiday in a remote part of Scotland. When Dr. David Kelly, the weapons inspector who had been cited as a source for Blair's claim that Saddam Hussein was in possession of weapons of mass destruction, revealed that this information was in fact false, he died suddenly and unexpectedly while out walking in Oxfordshire woodland with the official verdict of suicide. I was pretty incredulous about this last point about David Kelly, so I did a little tappy-tappy on my keyboard and found 2 books. This is Miles Goslet, An Inconvenient Death, How the Establishment Covered Up the David Kelly Affair. Pretty well referenced, long index at the back, some pictures in the middle. But the most interesting one I found is this, The Strange Death of David Kelly. And you can see at the bottom here, this is written by Norman Baker, MP. So Norman Baker, MP for Lewes in Sussex since 1997, has a strong reputation for taking up major issues with forensic research skills. His campaigning record has been recognised by awards from Channel 4 and The Spectator. So, yes, something is definitely rotten in Denmark. Tony Blair seems to be the man who is rolled out to make sure things go the way they go, and responses to potentially game-changing events are handled in a specific way. But I'm sure you'll agree that last paragraph I read has a heck of a lot of died suddenly and unexpectedly of reported heart failure and suicide by walking in woodland. Another how can I put a word on this? I hesitated too long, and then I started thinking about, maybe I need to cut this out, and then now I just talked about it, so maybe I can just leave it in. But another pattern that emerges, which Mark Devlin has seized upon and is very hard to ignore once you start to see it, is a number of musicians who get and accept MBEs. MBEs is, I don't even know what it stands for, but it's kind of a recognition from the Queen for doing something really good for the British Empire. And it could be from a variety of different disciplines and different areas. It might be music, arts, it could be politics, it could be science. There's a bunch of different ways to get it. But a heck of a lot of the mainstream, like Paul McCartney, he becomes Sir Paul McCartney. He's a knight of the British Empire, and he has been awarded this knighthood for services rendered. And this MBE is kind of, it's not a knighthood. You don't become a sir, but it's kind of, it's a step towards that. And these MBEs get presumably given out to people who are who are serving the agenda and serving it up to the masses and getting people on board through their influence, through their skills as, place, job, title here. But in the world of music, we find out, quote, despite apparently being an outspoken anti-war activist, Damon Albarn accepted an Order of the British Empire in the Queen's 2016 honours, which could be viewed as a slightly out-of-character thing to do, given that the Queen is the figurehead for one of the most murderous colonial empires in human history, responsible for the subjugation by military force of countless foreign lands. And that happens again and again and again. The sirs and the MBEs showing up, popping up, Sir Elton John. And I even believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was Sir Jimmy Savile. Yes, I was right. It's Sir James Wilson. Sorry, not Wilson. Let me do over. Sir James Wilson Vincent Savile, OBE, KCSG. He was an English DJ and television and radio personality who hosted BBC shows. He was very friendly with Prince, the King, formerly known as Prince, I should say. Charles, and he ended up being accused of horrific crimes, which I won't even go into right here. But he was knighted. He was given this title, Sir. He was given an OBE. I think an OBE is one above the MBE that Damon Albarn received. But that's the kind of company you're keeping if you accept one of these orders, one of these awards. I wanted to get this bit on the record as well because Mark does a really excellent job of just summarizing in a nutshell one of the key problems that we're facing today as a species. Quote, "Yet, while we were asleep at the wheel in the course of no more than 2 decades, our daily existence is now engulfed in a quagmire of Wi-Fi and cell phone signals, and micro and radio waves, all emitting electromagnetic frequencies that penetrate our brains and bodies 24/7, and whose long-term health implications cannot yet be understood. And the rapid onset of the smart grid through smart meters, TVs, phones, cars, motorways, and cities is only going to take this further. Reliance on technology has been so firmly ingrained into our daily lives that many young people, always the prime targets of such changes, are unable to get from one hour to the next without handling every aspect of their lives on their mobile phones or tablets. An aspect of how this move in particular has been achieved involves another factor that is so rarely considered or discussed. This is the dwindling attention spans, particularly in the 30s, that has been cultivated in the past few years. Someone unable to hold and develop a thought for more than a few seconds and who is swamped with things to do and think about at every stage of their day is someone unlikely to apply critical thought to important life issues, such as scrutinizing what the mainstream media tells us about a particular news story, questioning the illusory nature of money, or the very nature of this existence and our places in it. It is into this scenario that the advent of concentration distracting online sites and applications such as Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter play their part. Instagram's aim is in its name. Users are pressurized into documenting every instant of their day, and the minute they post a picture or record a few seconds of footage, the pressure is there to do it again, as that last one is now old hat. Then, Twitter's 140 character limit has had its role, since no meaningful message that says anything worthwhile can really be communicated with such restrictions, although the limit has recently been doubled to 280 characters. So, users are stifled in their capacity for expression, but still feel compelled to be constantly posting stuff because everybody else is. And all the time, the notion that technology is so cool is being instilled into the impressionable minds of the young to the point that any other way of getting through the day, like their parents' generation did, is unthinkable without such accessories. A generation groomed in this kind of mindset is going to be a far easier one to sell ideas like brain implants, microchips, smart grids, and a cashless society to, than one which can remember different ways of doing things. When major societal changes are introduced in increments, a population entrained in shortened attention spans is unlikely to recall more than 2 or 3 increments into the past with any great clarity. And people who can't hold a thought for more than a few seconds are so much easier to control. That's engineering. And what he's saying there about engineering is that's social engineering, not the kind of engineering that you use to build a car or an oil rig or a pencil that you can use in space, or that kind of engineering. He's talking about social engineering, which is the application of psychology and behavioral insights and nudges and other mind control manipulative techniques to get people to think and behave and act in a certain way. And this usually goes down to implanting ideas into their minds about the way the world is. And it's called worldview poisoning. So what is your view of the world? And whatever your view of the world is upstream of your behaviors and your actions and the things that you do in the world. And our worldviews get shaped by everything around us, the people we talk to, but nowadays even more so by the things which are presented to us through the screens and the speakers on our devices. These methods of getting ideas and information into our minds are very new, as he mentioned here, only decades old. And having them rolled out on such a mass scale and in the pockets of all our young people as their brains are developing, there's already good evidence to show that putting a baby or a young child onto an iPad or an iPhone or some sort of fondle slab device ruins their attention span for the rest of their lives. Not to mention the damage that having babies and very young children looking at masked faces has done in interfering with their ability to learn how to speak, how to move their faces, how to recognize facial expressions and emotions, because it was all covered up. These things have done untold amounts of damage, and we are not going to see the fallout of that, for quite some time. But it's a key problem. If you can erode somebody's attention span down to a few seconds so that all they're waiting for is a dopamine hit, and if they don't get it, boom, scroll on to the next thing, close that, pick the next thing, hit the next thing. It's like permanently playing a slot machine, when you crank the arm and the things spin round, and then ding ding, the sevens line up and you feel good, and then you crank the arm and you just do it over and over again. That's what we're being entrained to do. So we no longer have the attention span and the patience to learn something of value, to invest time and energy into acquiring a skill or knowledge that's going to give us immense amounts of value and satisfaction and progress and success and achievement later in life. No, we don't have time for that anymore. Nobody has the attention span to push through the discomfort of being rubbish at something because you're just starting to learn it, right? And it's a huge problem because it means people are going to be de-skilled. They're going to be unable to get the results they want out of life. It's going to lead into bitterness and resentment. It's going to lead into more people being dependent on the state for handouts because they don't know how to go out and make a worthwhile offer to the marketplace. They don't know how to go out and make themselves indispensable in the world of business. And on top of that, you're having automation and AI and technological solutions being rolled out to replace jobs rapidly at the same time as dumbing everyone down and getting their attention spans, to the length of a goldfish. And if you manage to stay with me through that whole rant, congratulations, you are in the upper crust of people who have not yet completely destroyed attention span. I'll send you your prize, which is a copy of The Strange Death of David. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to send that to you. I haven't read it yet, but you should buy a copy and read it yourself. And for your prize for staying with me through that whole rant, I'm just gonna give you I'll blow you a kiss. Well done. All right, got a good example here of how connected our beloved musicians are. Quote, Dave Grohl of Foo Fighters, by way of a great example, was earlier in a hardcore punk band out of DC named Scream. His father, James Harper Grohl, worked in politics as an assistant to Robert A. Taft Jr. Robert's father was William Howard Taft, the 27th President of the United States, and his father was Alfonso Taft, a founder of Skull and Bones. During John Kerry's presidential campaign in 2004, Dave Grohl joined the trail and dedicated the album In Your Honor to the former Skull and Bonesman. Yeah, rock and roll. Skull and Bones? What is Skull and Bones, you ask? I'm so glad you asked. This is Skull and Bones. This is America's Secret Establishment, Order of the Skull and Bones by Anthony C. Sutton. An introduction to the Order of Skull and Bones. So I haven't read this yet, but I have read some of Anthony Sutton's other work. I read his book, Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler, which I've reviewed on this channel. And that book explains how bankers at Wall Street funded Hitler and the Nazi Party, and they couldn't have done what they did without this American financier funding. He is prolific and well respected as a mainstream historian, and Anthony C. Sutton. In fact, I think he lost his job or was kicked out of the place where he was working for writing these books on topics which the mainstream, I guess, didn't want him to write about or investigate. Anyway, this is I don't even know when this book is from. Let's have a look quickly. 1983. Although this is a much newer. Oh, it's a first edition, but I don't believe that for a second because this doesn't look like it's from 1983. But anyway, what is the Order of the Skull and Bones? So on the back, we learn every spring since 1832, 15 new faces are asked to join the Order of Skull and Bones. After Yale, many go on to the heights of power and shape our world. This is the story of how and why. So it's Yale University in America. It's an elite university. It's kind of like Oxford or Cambridge here in the UK. And they have this secret society called Skull and Bones. Every year there's 15 people are invited to join it. And, it's a secret society. And there was a particular election in America where both presidential candidates were members of the Skull and Bones Society in Yale, from Yale. And I mean, just if you live in a democracy and if the best rise to the top and anyone has a shot at being the president, and we tell the school kids, you could be the president one day, you could be the prime minister one day. What are the odds of the two candidates going head to head, the one for the Pepsi team and one for the Coca-Cola team, both being from the same elite group within an elite university? It's pretty slim. But that is why Skull and Bones is relevant and why we just heard about it. So Dave Grohl, he's connected to the Skull and Bones. This bit really blew my mind, and I'm going to explain it with some quotes, but also kind of in my own words because it's quite a big section of the book. But in listening to and learning about geopolitics, I often hear people talk about The Game of Nations, which is a book by an ex-CIA operative called Miles Copeland. That's Copeland. Miles Copeland ended up living here in the UK and was rolled out on the BBC. And, but what they say is when you're never really ex-intelligence services, you never really fully retire. You can always be called upon to do some work. But anyway, this book, Miles Copeland, The Game of Nations, is pretty hard to find. It's expensive, and it details the shady, questionable things that the CIA gets up to. Not the kind of things that you see in the films and the Hollywood depictions of CIA, although sometimes they do reveal little bits of things here and there. But this book, I haven't yet took the plunge and shelled out the hundreds of pounds to get a copy. But I was surprised to see his name pop up in here. So the Copeland family and its patriarch, Miles Axe Copeland Jr., his middle name is Axe, pretty cool, quote, was a career CIA man and something of a legend within intelligence circles. According to former CIA asset John R. Stockwell, who has admitted to personally flying heroin out of Vietnam into the US on behalf of the CIA agency. It's anything but. So Copeland, he's actually around before the CIA is founded. He's in the OSS, which is the organization which became the CIA. So he was one of the founding members of the Office of Strategic Service in the 1940s, which morphed into the Central Intelligence Agency after World War II. So a little bit here about his career in the CIA. Quote, his CIA career involved overseas postings, and he was on the scene at many political coups and regime changes. These included a role in the 1949 Syrian coup d'etat and the 1953 overthrow of the Prime Minister of Iran. From 1957 to 68, Copeland was based in Beirut, during which time he worked closely with the Dulles brothers of CIA repute. Outside of his CIA activities, he also became a consultant to General Abdel Nasser of Egypt, who had overthrown that country's king. Copeland was involved in the setting up of the Mukhabarat, the country's version of the CIA. In his book, The Game Player, Copeland admitted that he had been sent to Egypt to assess the feasibility of assassinating Nasser. Copeland reportedly retired from the CIA in 1957, but continued to carry out missions for the agency upon request. He relocated to London in 1970, where he became a frequent television guest defending the virtues of the intelligence community. So that right there shows you the crossover between the entertainment industry and what's beamed in through the television and the intelligence military community and network. These things are best off being thought of as the same thing. The entertainment media industry being kind of one arm of the military intelligence community, which is one arm of the politicians. That's one arm, and then another arm is the banking and the money and the finance. You know, these things are all connected and they're all overlapping and they're all working against, you know, you and me. Quote, he also helped devise a board game for the manufacturer Waddington's entitled The Game of Nations and wrote an article titled Spooks for Bush. He had earlier named George H.W. Bush, who trauma-based mind control survivor Kathy O'Brien has named as a rapist, pedophile, and Satanist, as his favorite of all CIA directors. So that's Miles Axe Copeland. You can read his books, his own memoirs, his confessions. It's on Wikipedia. The guy's a CIA man through and through. If you cut him, he would bleed CIA. Now, how does this connect and tie into the music industry? Well, I'm glad you asked. Quote, displaying an apparent lack of imagination, Copeland's firstborn... Oh, no, let me rewind. I'm sorry, rewind. Quote, biographies of Copeland often list him as an accomplished musician outside of his spying activities. Although this aspect may explain why his sons were encouraged to go to work within the music field, there seems to be some doubt as to whether this was actually the case, or whether this was embellishment added to Copeland's CV at a later stage. According to Wikipedia, there is nothing in Copeland's CIA files to suggest he was ever a professional musician, but several relatives and friends have testified to his musical ability. Copeland's books contain several impressive statements about his days as a jazz musician, including that he spent a week playing fourth trumpet in the Glenn Miller Orchestra, although this claim has been discredited. Displaying an apparent lack of imagination, Copeland's firstborn was named Miles Copeland III, birthed in London in 1944. From 1966, he studied at the American University of Beirut, an institution which not only groomed many future world leaders, but also 19 of the delegates who signed the United Nations Charter in 1945, and future Apple founder Steve Jobs. Prior to this, Miles III and his brother Stuart had attended Beirut's American Community School, a location which later turned out actors Keanu Reeves and Greg Kinnear, as well as Bran Farron, who developed the patents for Apple's pinch-to-zoom technology and who later collaborated with Miles III on visual effects for many of his act's concerts. Miles III's first accomplishment in music is said to have been his formation of the group Wishbone Ash. He went on to found the agency and record label British Talent Management, focusing on prog rock bands. By 1977, he was poised to fully exploit, or direct, the emerging punk and new wave scene through his new Illegal Records operation. Later, he established International Records Syndicate, IRS for short, which put out releases by many of the key names in the new wave market. Part of Miles III's extremely efficient business model saw him scoring a music video show with then-fledgling MTV, on which he only promoted his own artists. He now owns and operates Copeland International Artists, or CIA. Get it? In interviews, Miles III stated that he came to a point where he had to decide whether his career was going to be spycraft or the music industry. Maybe he chose both. The second Copeland son, Ian, was born in 1949. After military service, which included a tour of duty in Vietnam, he first joined his brother Miles in his music industry activities. By 1979, Ian had founded his own operation, Frontier Booking International, FBI, a talent agency to represent emerging acts ranging from the B-52s to The Cure. For a while, Ian was romantically linked to Rolling Stones associate and daughter of a British Army officer, Marianne Faithfull, and to Courtney Cox, who also happened to be his stepsister. Although, I did look that up, and in the other place where I looked it up, which I think was Wikipedia, it didn't say Courtney Cox was his stepsister. It said that she was his second cousin or something like that. The youngest Copeland brother was Stuart, born in 1952 and best known as the drummer for the most prolific of all the new wave bands, The Police. Yes, that's The Police, with lead singer Sting, as in Sting Operation. Do you ever feel like you're being given a clue? Though rock lore has it that he got his name because he often wore a yellow and black striped jersey, making him look like a bee. Sure. Yeah, incredible. Let's see. So you've got a firmly established CIA man who's being rolled out on British television to ease the public and smooth things over and say, yeah, there's nothing to see here. The CIA is the good guys. We're on your side. We're trying to, save you and protect you. And his three sons are setting up businesses all around hiring artists and getting them gigs and promoting them. And the initials of these are IRS, FBI, and CIA. And then Stuart joins a band with Sting called The Police, where they sing a song about every breath you take, I'll be watching you. Nothing but coincidence, and I'm sure I'm reading far too much into it and just being paranoid. All right, we'll do this bit. It's pretty spicy. The J word. Quote, something which I personally find to be of great interest is the massive number of Jewish family links to punk and new wave, and I feel the question as to why this should be is one worth asking. Inevitably, a small minority will instantly, by default, be triggered to brand me anti-Semitic for even raising the issue. Society has been so systematically programmed by the likes of the Rothschild-controlled Anti-Defamation League that the J word always has that effect among a few. If these music scenes were as widely populated by, let's say, Swedish, Korean, or Brazilian people as they are by people of Jewish origin, I would be asking exactly the same question. Would I then be demonized as an anti-Swede, an anti-Korean, or an anti-Brazilian, and shunned by all of polite society as a result? No, because Jews, or at least those that describe themselves as Jewish, are the only group about whom such politically correct paranoia exists. The phrase anti-Semite is leveled before what is even being said is examined to see whether it might in fact have validity, and the discussion is shut down there and then. In reference to this instant response, former Israeli Minister Shulamit Aloni admitted in a 2002 interview, "It's a trick. We always use it." This then becomes a question in itself. Why are these measures in place for this one group above all others? Good question mark. And I should clear up as well that I have no idea why that is the case, but it is the case, but we're not allowed to talk about it or ask about it or mention it or spin any theories, because if we do, we get shut down. And I'm not even sure if that video will get flagged up. But, it's the risks we run. And they weren't my words. I'm just reading some words from a book that I read. I do not endorse anything that I've read here, although from what I can tell, Mark is a bit of a stand-up guy, because I had a few emails with him back and forth, and he was really, really friendly. And, it says a lot about how people treat their, their customers. You can glean a lot. All right, if that last little bit didn't get this video flagged, then I think this one definitely will. And then we'll wrap it up, I think. So, this is page 236, the homosexualization of hip-hop. Quote, a final, more recent agenda that has been systematically unfolded within hip-hop warrants some exposure. It's another elephant in the room, a factor that few seem comfortable talking about due to the politically correct mindset that has been fomented by the social engineers, and it involves another group who have been rendered beyond scrutiny in society. By way of another caveat, let's just be clear, this is not any kind of judgmental attack on people who happen to be gay. A person's sexual orientation and lifestyle choices are their own business, and so long as it doesn't cause harm to others or take away anyone's rights, there's no problem. This shouldn't even need pointing out, taken within the overall theme of this book, but there it is for the record. We're not talking about individual personal cases here, though, but about a trend that can be seen to have been calculated by how quickly it has taken root, how all-pervasive it has become, and by how many boxes it ticks in the long-term plans of agencies such as Tavistock, the Frankfurt School, and SRI. The glorification of homosexual and LGBT lifestyles is a tactic in the eugenics and population reduction plans of these groups. It serves to further break up the traditional family unit by destroying the stability that dynamic has and to stir up discord between different groups within society. And a society fractured by perceived differences is far easier to covertly manipulate than one in which people stand together against any form of invasive tyranny. Additionally, the frequent flaunting of transgenderism in the media ties directly into the satanic mindset of society's occult controllers, which is all about taking what's natural in creation, discernible male and female principles, and inverting and merging them into something completely different. Rapper Waka Flocka Flame indicated that he had caught onto the agenda when he commented in a 2017 interview, "They don't market families and husbands and wives no more. They're marketing young girls, transgenders, they're marketing evil, man. I ain't got nothing against nobody's preferences, but putting it on TV, that's crazy. You know, kids is the only people watching TV." Historically, hip-hop as a genre and a culture has been fiercely heterosexual, at least on the surface. Stories of ritual orgies that artists and executives must undergo to become successful are manifold, of course, and this was addressed in Volume 1 of Musical Truth. This is Volume 2. Volume 1 is also excellent, and I reviewed that on this channel as well. Many public heroes who appear to be straight will have partaken in gay sex acts in exchange for their success. But for the purpose of this chapter, we're talking about the way artists have always been presented to the public prior to the 2010s. Few rappers had ever come out of the closet. When a rumor emerged that there was a prominent gay rapper in the industry in the late 1990s, everyone speculated on who it could be. It was big news because it went so against the grain of what that genre had always been about. If, during those years, any A-list artist had appeared in public wearing women's clothing, it would have been headline news in the hip-hop press. How things have changed. Where the dress style of choice for rappers used to be loose-fitting jeans, t-shirts and hoodies, and the baggier the better, by the early 2000s, artists such as Drake, Kanye West, Andre 3000 and Pharrell Williams had made it their trademark to rock the metrosexual look, consisting of tight-fitting clothing, heavy on the pink. Not long afterwards came the trendy talk of artists being gender fluid, gender neutral, or non-binary. The London grime artist Skepta indicated the international nature of the agenda when he appeared at an awards event sporting women's knitwear, proudly proclaiming that he was now gender fluid. The fact that this has been achieved with very little backlash and with those voicing any kind of objection quickly denounced as bigoted or intolerant in a genre previously so full of alpha male machismo is testament to how successful the manipulators have become at their game and how socially intimidated people seem to speak out. Male artists wearing women's clothing have become more blatant as the years have progressed. Gnarls Barkley star CeeLo Green appeared in a photo shoot wearing a wedding dress. ASAP Rocky donned a dress during an episode of BET's 106 and Park. Lil B wore women's earrings in the video to his Got the Mac Loaded. Lil Wayne performed at the 2011 VMA Awards topless and wearing women's leopard print leggings. And he mentions that you can look at the the section in volume 1 about the meaning of leopard print and what that signifies. Will Smith's son Jaden has worn similar leggings. Young Jock turned up to an industry event wearing a dress. Young Thug appeared in a photo shoot dressed as Little Bo Peep and had previously worn a leopard print dress. Lil Uzi Vert, say the name quickly a couple of times and see what it sounds like. Lil Uzi Vert. Lil Uzi Vert is keen on rocking the women's wear too. Lil Yachty, what is it with all the Lils and Youngs, had a cover design for one of his releases featuring a gay couple kissing. Nothing wrong with it per se, but timing and context are the important factors in establishing whether something is part of a far-reaching agenda. Why did the release come at that specific time, and what else was going on in the scene at large? One thing was a number of artists such as I Love Makonnen, Big Freedia, and Frank Ocean coming out as gay. The comments of comedian Dave Chappelle regarding the ritualistic requirement for virtually all black males in Hollywood to wear a dress in one of their films are also worth considering in this context. By the time up-and-coming Florida rapper New Age Jerk Boy had emerged with his video Married to the Game, in which he talks of "your bitch giving me neck," while filleting machine guns in a wedding dress with colourful bows in his dyed blonde hair, all hope for the future of humanity had been lost. A blurring of the genders is taking place straight out of the Tavistock Instruction Manual, and working in tandem with the feminization of male artists, there is a trend towards females becoming more masculine. While I think of it, here's another slow drip change that's been creeping up with stealth and about which nobody else seems to be talking. The ridiculous, retarded, and impossible to remember spelling of artist names, the likes of will.i.am, Yixing Bane, ASAP Ferg, ASAP Rocky, Cash, Ty Dolla $ign, The Weeknd, Lotto Boys, Designer, Made in Tio, Mnek, I Love Makonnen. Looks like someone fell asleep over a keyboard and resemble expressions of the Newspeak concept out of Orwell's 1984, where citizens are made impotent by a new, meaningless language. Why is the hip-hop scene so unrecognizable from what it was 20 or even 10 years ago? And why has this genre in particular been selected for so much cultural manipulation? These are the questions that anyone who doesn't appreciate having their thoughts and values molded for them by other people would do well to consider. Mark Devlin's Musical Truth Volume 2. I just finished Volume 3 today. Also an incredible book, just chock-a-block packed full with tidbits and factoids and information and references. And also at the end of every chapter in the book, he gives you further YouTube links and articles and songs to look at and evidence to back up the things he's claiming. And he says, don't believe everything in the book. Go and look at it and check it out for yourself. It's always the sign of a good researcher and a good writer when they tell you not to believe them, but to go and have a look and verify the information that they're laying out. So pretty spicy stuff, pretty hot topics, but I think it's worth reiterating that there's nothing wrong with all of these things that we just talked about per se. The question is, are they organic and are they natural? And so the next question is, why are they being over-amplified and overrepresented in so much of our mainstream pop culture and fashion shows and award shows? All of this is targeted at young people. All of this, we don't, people my age don't care about Lil Uzi Vert and ASAP, The Weeknd, and all these people, but young people do, and young people are impressionable, and young people are susceptible to having worldviews planted in their minds, in their subconscious minds, through the use of music, which is hypnotic, and lyrics, which a lot of people don't question lyrics and think about the words and the ideas that are going in there, and think about how deeply lyrics go into your memory. How often do you hear a song from 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if you're as old as me, and you can still remember every word? As soon as the song starts, you can sing the whole thing word for word. You know, the content of these pieces of media and the pop music are extremely important. They're going into young people's minds and they're shaping their subconscious, which drives their behaviors and it drives their experience in life. Because, as I said at the start of this video, the worldview, the deep philosophy of life and what you think and believe about the world and the way it is downstream or upstream. It's part of the causal factor that leads to behavior and the decision making and the way we choose to operate in this world. And therefore, should we fail to pay attention to our worldview and what's informing it, and if we fail to deliberately construct our worldview based on evidence and based on information that is good and rock solid and coherent and makes sense, you know, if we're not doing that and engaged in that practice ourselves, someone else is doing it for us. And I can hand on heart tell you that those people do not care about you. They don't want the best for you. They want to enslave you. They want to turn you into a moron. And the music industry is a huge force which is turning people into morons. That's my conclusion. Hope you enjoyed this Musical Truth Volume 2 review from me, Nick Hayes. This is Hayes Reviews. Check out djmarkdevlin.co.uk. He's a public speaker. He puts together playlists of conscious music. He is a warrior for truth. He's trying to shine a light on the machinations of people who are really hell-bent on making life here in this beautiful, abundant place shit. And I don't want to let them do that. I don't think you do either. That is me signing off. I hope you stuck with me for this hour. If you did, congratulations. You still have an attention span, and that means that there still is some hope for the human race.